And now, and thank you, Sabur, also. And now we are about to start panel number one, which is entitled Contributing to the Social Good Through Corporate Venturing. Many of the companies, of the large companies, and probably one of the largest companies on the globe, are attempting to, let's say, recontribute to the society, starting certain forms of non-profits and liberating themselves from the, let's say, chains of profit making. Let's put that way. So the key question would be, actually, the first question would be, is it possible that corporates contribute to the other values of society besides the profit? But I think that also an additional wider question should be raised. Is it possible that we should, or do we have to, can we have to return to the core values of what the first version and first notion of capitalism done by Adam Smith in 1770s, before the Wealth of Nations in the theory of moral sentiment, was a morality of capitalism. And I have a tremendous pleasure to first invite the moderator, my dear fellow Zsolt Katona, who is a former CEO of Budapest Stock Exchange and current CEO of Solus Capital, coming from Hungary. Zsolt, please, the floor is yours. Welcome. Now, speaker and participant in this panel, Leila Alaton, the board member of Alarko Holding and president of Alvin Medica, Turkey. Welcome. Mario Ottilio, president, Europe in Global Coalition on Aging, coming from Italy. Mario, welcome. Last but not least, of course, Ugur Talehan, regional VP of Accor Hotels and, at this moment, even more important, CEO of this spectacular hotel that we've been guests for the 3 years in a row. Ugur, please, welcome. Dear ladies and gentlemen, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. It was a great introduction, and I fully agree with you on the morality of the capitalism. It is a huge question. Actually, it was yesterday on CNBC this topic discussing also in Davos. It is one of the main questions. Yes, the panel consists of a wide variety of expertise. We are talking about Ms. Leila Alaton, who is let me quote correctly, a board member of Alarko Holding and president of Alma Medica. But also she is a very well-known businesswoman, and she works on women empowerment, and she participates in several university lectures and TV programs. We also have Mario Ottilio, who is not only the president of the Global Coalition of Aging, but he is also the managing director of the High Lantern Group, which is a strategic positioning firm, and he's advising trade associations, firms, and international institutions on strategic communication and sustainability strategies. And I also personally welcome Ugur Talehan, who is a veteran expert in the hotelier and tourism business, 27 years of experience, and I personally would like to thank you for your hospitality of this great event. So indeed, the main title is Contributing to the Social Good Through Corporate Venturing, and the teaser of this panel, which is in your official documentation, very well describes a couple of examples, like the Amazon, Berkshire Hathaway, and JP Morgan initiative in healthcare. So all these companies put together their efforts for their 1.2 million employees to create this non-profit organization to provide better health for their employees and at the most cost-effective basis. Also, it was mentioned that Larry Fink, the CEO of BlackRock, in his annual letter, addressed the climate change as the most important topic, and he also addressed that corporates should not and must not just look at profitability and generating dividends for shareholders, but for the sustainability and for the social good of the whole society. And just the latest example of yesterday, Jeff Bezos, as you could see, he created a 10 billion fund fighting climate change. They called the Bezos Earth Fund, partly under pressure of the Amazon employees, who you might remember that last May, I think thousands of Amazon employees wrote a letter asking Jeff Bezos that what he will do against this most crucial topic. And here is the answer. He created this 10 billion fund as a first initiative. So putting his, I think, 8% of his net worth into this fund. So these are concrete examples, but I think, and I'm now turning to the panel, would be great to put these examples into a broader context and maybe in the timeline, so how it has evolved. And may I ask Mario to elaborate on that?
Yeah, double click. So yeah, no, thanks for the question. I mean, this is there is not yet a science and an established narrative on that. So we with iLaunch, we tried to work out a sort of a framework in mapping the evolution of corporate social responsibility or corporate shared value creation, as it's been called right now. And I could say in very general terms, if you look at the period, for instance, in the mid 90s, so we're talking maybe 95 and earlier, so anything before the Millennium Development Goals, which was really a first attempt to really focus, businesses and the world actually on a set of shared objectives when we look at sustainability. The approach was really to kind of ignore the problem. It's like, this is not an issue, little responsibility taken. Generally, the CEO was actually driving, because of his personal value, his personal interest, activities and sustainability activities, and that was often the case, of a community engagement, right? So basically, the company operates in a broader environment, geographical environment. So I give back to the community. Then what happens is that with the Millennium Development Goals, there was a sort of a very first kind of globalization, if you want, of the issue. And I think, when you look into healthcare and other areas, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, Global Fund, right? So this, it's not an issue, it's like, yeah, it is an issue. That's the approach. But still, right, we can demonstrate some sort of contribution. We can just put some money and deal with it. And then you move in the timeline to 2005, more or less, like at the midpoint of the MDG, everybody was stressed. It's like, okay, let's try to resolve this. Let's put more money. Let's try to see what our core competencies in the firm can actually help, right? Resolve X, Y, Z issue that we are responsible for or that is linked to our business. And so you start to see, CSR dealt in a more strategic way, until I will say recently, with the Sustainable Development Goals, which are really like a huge catalyzer of attention. You get private sector at the table from the beginning, and therefore you get a huge acceptance also from C-suite offices about the fact to say, okay, this is not only an issue that we have to resolve, but is actually turning into an opportunity for us. And then you start seeing right now sustainability embedded within the strategy and the company mission, not anymore a department that is well funded, but actually from zero. So if that helps, as a timeline.
Yes, I think that was very useful. Ms. Ellerton, maybe may I ask you what's your take on that, and how do you see what are the newest tendencies in this respect, trends on the market, and also I would like to ask you as a businesswoman, what do you see that maybe women are more receptive for or sensible for this notion, and how they are tackling this issue.
Thank you. Yeah, maybe the last part was the most to the point, that we worry more, I think. But before I get into that, in the 1990s, I had my own public relations company, and the motto was looking good by being good, was my motto. You have to be good to look good. So I find this new notion very passé, actually, because it should have been much more important then. Today, it's more hypocritical. It's because you really have to look good that you are being good. So I don't find that it's so genuine anymore. Those companies need to look good because they are obliged to, in a way. So the genuinity is very questionable. I happen to come from a very socially responsible culture. For those who know, my father, the founder, one of the founders of Alarco Holding Group, both partners were extremely socially aware and responsible. So it was in our DNA, in our corporate culture, that we did everything to also benefit the society. The talks they would give, always they tackled a problem that had nothing to do with the company. Just a very known example, and even today, I saw it on LinkedIn about Zonguldak. It's the Black Sea region of Turkey. There were so many deaths in the mines of Zonguldak, and my father had this idea: let's import coal, let's train everybody, let's get into new business lines. Still, we will make money because importing would be cheaper than having people die and getting out those pieces of rocks that have no kilocalories, whatever. I don't want to go into details, but it's very Googleable. And therefore, the bottom line is, yes, it's definitely a must to be very socially responsible. Yes, women that have boards that have women on their boards, the companies that have women on their boards or in their very high upper management are already there, because that force is pushing the board to go into that direction. And the genuinity, the real if it's really genuine, if it's really true that they are behind those causes, would only prove itself by the consistency and the continuity of that commitment to that cause. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ugor. You have a wealth of experience in your respective fields, like hotels and tourism. I Wherever I go, actually in the hotel, let it be the restaurant or the bathroom or the rooms, the brochures, all the documents are talking about sustainability, the Swissiness. And how do you see this issue from your perspective?
Okay, thank you. And first, welcome, and really great pleasure to have you all of you here. And again, is Accor, as you know, is one of the largest hospitality company, and all the other large corporates, of course, is the sustainability is the key. and from globalization that we take to like localization is more on what is going on in the local market. But this year is our biggest focus is the plastics, that to make sure by 2020, end of the 2020, that you're not going to see any plastic materials anymore. We already started replacing most of the amenities in the room, but each month with new samples, new products, we're really focusing on plastic. Of course, we also have lots of other activities focusing on recycling first, and then we are the only one of the hotel, I think, creating its energy. We have the generations in the hotel. We produce our electricity. I can even sell my electricity to municipality of the local. Yes, that's why I think we are there with the sustainability, but the focus in 2020 is the plastics, the reduction on the plastic usage.
Well, then I would recommend you in the morning at the startup pitching competition. There was a very promising company who create bioplastic packaging and cups and everything out of corn. So maybe you should look at that company. Coming back to the best practices and the good examples. So if we look at the two sides of investing with impact or for impact. Everything starts on the philanthropy side with the grants. Okay, that's I would not consider as a real investment. Myself, I'm a venture capitalist, so I have a little bit different view on that. But then comes with investing for impact, which again does not necessarily requires a return. And then comes the financial sector, like my company, a venture capital company. We are investing with impact, so we do need a kind of return on our investment. Plus, we would like to see a measurable impact on the society. And then on the mutual fund side, we have now very popular ESG funds, the environmental, social, and governance related funds, which have become increasingly popular in the past couple of years, and actually they are now outperforming the S&P 500 in many ways. So definitely there is a tendency on that. Maybe I would like to ask from Mario again that how do you see this this trend evolving, and what are these trends unstoppable? And also on the consumer side, probably they have more and more scrutiny on these risk factors like the ESG factors on measuring these risks.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thank you. And actually, I think Leila, if I may, described very well the situation, from a just like factual point of view on what's happening today. In other words, maybe what she says is this is inexorable anyway. You like it or not, you have to deal with that. Now the motives, of course, change. Between company and company. I must say that because private sector was included from the beginning in some of the discussion around the Sustainable Development Goals, I think it has generated a sort of a relaxation also at C-suite level. And so sometimes you see some sort of genuine contribution, but you know, I totally understand where you're looking into. But looking at the inexorability of that, right? You mentioned, Jolt, that you know, ESG funds are becoming incredibly attractive. They, you know, yielding a lot in terms of output. I was digging some data which I can place now, according to your question. There was a survey by the Bank of America where, you know, they were saying 37% of the millennials are currently already owners of ESG assets in their financial portfolio, and 40% are interested in adding, you know, new assets. And you know, and that's really like one of the key, you know, trends that we have to take into account: who is actually purchasing, and you know, what are the motivation, what is the cultural background, you know, what are the preferences of those. So you know, when we look into you know, the well, it's actually, what I want to say is it's true on both sides, right? On those who invest, right? Because these are people that are more and more going to have availability, but also it's true on the other side. I mean, we want, you know, like companies will more and more rely on millennials, will more and more rely on Z generation, right, as workers. And they want, from their company purpose, they want to know they're working for a company that respects all the global compact standards, that, you know, like is involved in issues, paraphrasing Leila, you know, that have nothing to do with the business of the company, right? In fact, you know, like we work sometimes on the tourism side, and we try to tell to the cruise companies, saying, guys, you should invest in healthcare. Then, you know, like after a little bit of then we say, well, there are a lot of things, you know, there is infectious disease prevention, chronic disease prevention, the food you sell, the markets you operate in, and so on and so forth, right? So I guess it's a trend that is absolutely, you know, there. Right now, it also, you know, like brings a lot of financial results, kind of a positive results. And I will think, you know, like I will just closing saying that there was a study that we saw very recently where you basically compares the situation of the intangible assets, right, reputationally, from 98 to 2018. So we're talking about a couple of decades, and the kind of the value that can be attributed to intangible assets just went from approximately, I think, 30% to approximately 70. And so that explains as well, you know, how much anyway reputation, positioning, sustainability is very important for the companies, and therefore, you know, for who invests and who works in those companies.
Thank you. That's excellent. Actually, I was thinking about giving who deserve the best kudos. The big blue chip companies who are spending already hundred millions, like Shell and the others. But you know, it's sort of their core business as well, to looking for solutions on clean water, clean energy, and so on. Or the SMEs, or even the startups, proportionally from the revenue stream, they spend much more on these type of, for example, ESG compliant issues. So I would say the SMEs or the startups deserve even a better gratitude for complying with that. Leila, may I kindly ask you what are your top, if we have to make a kind of ranking, what are your top priorities in the sustainability issues? The UN has listed, I think, 17 sustainable development goals, like poverty or clean water access. Obviously, climate change is a big issue. How do you see what are the hottest problems?
There is only one, because the rest will solve by itself. It's by eliminating the inequality of reaching the resources, and this big gap of the big difference that the people have all around the world. This big gap between the rich and the poor. It's too big, it's getting bigger, and it's getting more and more dangerous. I happen to be, again, I remember my father, my late father, 15 years ago or more, Jack Welch, the big GE CEO, had visited Turkey, and he had a lecture, I think, in this hotel, as a matter of fact. And for the ones who know, my father was a visionary and a very, he would express the problems before they would arrive or they were in question. He would be, in Turkish, we say, erken öten horoz, the nasıl denir horoz? The early, no, the one that earlier in the morning, le coq qui the one that says things earlier than the others, before others. And he had asked, he had proposed to Mr. Welch, don't you think it's about time that we reread Marx, you know? And of course, Mr. Welch had not understood anything about the point he wanted to make, and he had said, "What a silly question." So, but for some reason, the audience had applauded my dad's question because it's exactly what we're discussing today. This big wage difference, that big difference of access to everything between the rich and the poor. It cannot go on like this. There is no way it's a sustainable model. Therefore, either the governments or I don't know which body should come definitely with a proposal to integrate, to give back to the societies that need it before the others. You know what I mean? Jeff Bezos never thought that he would be a $10 zillion guy anyhow, and he doesn't need it, and he has to live in 10 zillion years to whatever do with that. So it has to be after a certain point, stage, threshold, whatever. It has to go to those companies that are trying to do good for the society, for the humanity. And don't forget, those are big luxury because they need very deep pockets to be developed and to be known and to be sustainable. Here downstairs, just go around, you'll see many very interesting, very humanistic, very conscious products or projects like this what agriculture, it grows in the house without the grass, whatever. So all this, it's research. That means money. I mean, time. All this needs such deep pockets. It must have a certain to have it started. There must be an advantage. There must be a positive thing to do about those kind of projects. They must be categorized in a different way, I think, because no startup can sustain so long. You must really, by the time they go and find the investors in Silicon Valley, even for that you need money, for everything. So governments should have maybe okay, they have, of course, the Medi parks and everything, but still, I think this is getting more and more important because it's the new generation that is aware. It's the new generation that thinks in a more humanistic way, I think. Thank you.
Yeah, so I think it has to be said, all of this is interconnected, right? When you look into human development anyway, healthcare, smart cities, of course, climate, and so others. So I'm biased. So we are on a crusade to say healthcare, should be the focus. And this is the underlying factor, right, for human development anyway. There is a lot of discussion on climate, on green, which is absolutely important. This is one of the things that a lot of people, in my personal view, are underestimating going forward. But then, of course, looking at healthcare and as a way also to address the inequalities that you're talking about, right? Access to services, so pursuing universal health coverage, but also just, like investments in prevention of infectious disease, of chronic disease. In there, businesses can do so many things, and it doesn't really matter whether you are an aerospace company, you are, the football association, you are the hotel, whether you are, the airlines. I mean, you always will have a footprint in healthcare. So I would encourage, really to, CEOs in general to look into that. And the process for that, and I'm closing, is really like involving private sector C-suits in particular from the beginning, when you think about sustainability, because that is the only way in which you can kind of get buy-in from corporates, and then you can start reverting some of the trend, looking at the genuinity of the actions, right? So
Again, I think I really agree. Ms. Alaton's opinion has to be accessible and has to be that reachable to larger crowd, that they can be supported, and not to just to tick the box, and has to be genuine. And that's why most of the times, if the corporate or large company comes that this is the sustainability action, and they say is just there for their PR, or they just do it for a photo and then nothing behind it. And honestly, I think maybe more educational side to change the culture, let the people to understand really sustainability is not just something is a show, but something that for the future. And I think changing the culture and letting them and maybe involving them a little bit more. But again, is the gap is huge, and who involves with sustainability or who likes to really give back has the deep pocket, but who really needs to be involved to understand and have the better mindset is the one with the small pocket. And that's why I think needs to be balanced, and educationally we have to really work on cultural changes rather than just a few companies yearly target, or just not event, but has to be genuine.
Excellent, thanks very much. So I believe all of us are doing utmost to comply with these or to answer these issues. I personally was luckily involved in setting up in Hungary the first social impact fund, and also the first water impact fund together with EIF. But that's the business side. My last question before the questions from the audience, just a quick round, all three of you, in your personal investments, let it be your savings or angel investments, how do you handle these issues? Do you take care of this? Do you pay attention to these issues? I personally just reshuffled my pension, my retirement portfolio. 50% now goes to ESG funds, but that's just one example. So I would like to ask you, how do you, as a person, are handling this issue? Maybe Ms. Alaton could start.
I only preach or say things that I can be doing. What I'm saying and what I'm doing should be matching. I think that goes for everyone. I mean, I happen to be in the medical device field, and as a women rights advocate and big supporter of more women to have their financial independence. I have probably 70% of the company that are women, especially the blue collar, because we produce stents, catheters, balloons, and I make a point of reminding them that they are also doing something good for the society. What we produce is elongating the life of human beings, even though sometimes one stent is sold for less than 2 cups of coffee, believe it or not. That's another injustice, if you ask me. So much technology, so much work, so much sweat, blood, and money going into such devices, and they are becoming commodities. And you have to come up again with a new technology and whatever. But that you need a big pocket for the R&D of that. That's another issue. But the point I want to make, definitely we as the upper management of the companies, if we are not behind in what we are talking, it's very misleading, and it's very shallow, and it's actually a shame. Thank you.
So that's a tricky question for me because I'm not in a group. Just to set up with others, like an office of a consulting group that looks into sustainability and gets ideas and says, I think that company that has nothing to do with that issue should work on that, and we try to sell it, if you want, to advocate for that and to create, of course, a return for the company, but then with a social impact, if you want. So in the choice, if you want, that I have made already, there was that type of thinking. And I think, this is so exciting if you think, because yes, it's inexorable. So it's like, heavy on a lot of companies that have to do that culture change that you were mentioning before. But it's exciting as well because, you fundamentally, through sustainability, you could shape, you can evolve society, right?
Yes, I think I'm in the same as Mario's position is again managing the large portfolio of the hotels in Turkey. I did not have time to start talking with Paul yet for maybe future as an investor. But again, with I think we are the leaders that who manages these large hotels as the entrepreneurship that really helps us on running it and gaining revenues. But on the investment side, I think honestly, personally, I think I'm taking the question. Your question is personally. More than sustainability, just trying to give back on helping students that needs in east side of Turkey. That's what I do, and there's a dozen of students that I support them studying, and every quarter also I help to collect books and notebooks and pen and pencils to send them to that schools, and I try to give back as much as I can, and also start thinking for the future also what to do, and continue with the large corporates or start also running my business. As I used to be a chef in London, I have also skill that I can cook, and that's what is now. Everyone's now start giving me hints that you should open your restaurant, you should open your business, you should do that. But again, it's all about time. And now we are very busy working for the large corporates, but hopefully someday. Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you very much. I just got the sign that we do not have time for Q&A, unfortunately. So I just would like to thank to this wonderful panel, Miss Leila Alaton, Mario Otillo, and Ugur Talaihan. Thank you very much.